it sound? So that's the evolution of Bob Fosse. I mean, not the man, but the piece that I'm writing. So it's kind of interesting, you know. The major thing is, does this sound okay? It's really, I wish somebody would. Is everything sounding all right? It's important. Can I be heard and everything? Because I hope so, because we've been having some audio issues. Now I'm glad, you know, that during the concert, oh, excellent, that makes me happy. You know, Wednesday night's concert went fairly well audio-wise, and I was happy people came out, and I was tempted to sort of, because I did that concert this week, I was tempted to overall or postpone what I planned to do today and just do an episode on musical issues. I don't know why, just because I'm at the piano, and I thought, why don't I talk about, you know, how I do this or how I do that? But, you know, I went ahead because I wanted to talk a little bit about volume and mass. So it's a strange idea, I know. I get that. But I'm talking about the concept of the older world, or like much of the 20th century, where things were about taking up some kind of space. Now, of course, you know, when you're dealing with media or art, artistic expression, or art projects, or I would say art objects in general, and those things are on a screen, that's still, you could say, well, that's still taking up some space, even if it's a little, it's like this, or if it's like this phone, you know. But it, you know, that sort of comment is a little, you know, that's true, but so there's space and then there's space. So I mean, the evolution or revolution, or the push by the engineers that have enormous power and authority in our society, and have now for 40 or 50 years, is for everything to be consolidated into one place. And it could be a reason. So let's start talking about what I'm wearing. So I'm wearing this. This is a part of a suit, and it's one of the recent, when I was still having clothes made, which was a few years ago. This is a special cloth called Solero. That's so some cloths have such unique properties in fabrication that they have their own technical terms. In fashion. And one of those words is solero, which was invented by a British military person long, in the beginning of the 19th century. And it has to do with the warp and the weft, that one of the threads is a kind of a red thread. It's a kind of worsted. As I've said before, most of the clothes I wear fall under the category of a worsted. And worsted is, you could also say wool, but it has to do with the property of the way the yarn is combed, and there's an evenness to it. And people use words like even, they use words like smooth. Most formal wear, almost all sort of classic or traditional menswear is some kind of worsted, except for sport clothing, which is often can be a woolen, which it's not smooth. And woolen, of course, is, it's like similar to like a woolen sweater. I mean, not always. They're like, so it's complicated. So, menswear is sort of divided between these terms. So this is a worsted, and it's solero. And just to show you that it's a real thing, that solero comes in different. This also, too, is solero. See, it has that same red, that same iridescent quality. And it has to do, I think, of the weave and the way they put the two colors. And, some soleros have more olive in them. Some soleros more greenish, more tan, beige. But, it's a kind of cloth. Now, all of this cloth I'm discussing now fits under the worsted category. And that's a very general term. So I'm gonna show you something really interesting. I have the very first garment I had made, by which I mean, well, actually two things. So I have a garment. This garment was sort of semi-bespoke. So it's what we would now call made to measure. But when I had this made, it was 1989. I was in my 20s. That's how old this jacket you're going to see is. Why did I hang on to it? It doesn't fit me anymore all these years. Well, why not? If you have something made and it's important to you and you're 26 and you've never done anything like that before. I mean, there's an earlier, I should say that my history of clothing is very complex, because before I had this garment made in 1987, 88, one of those 2 years, I had a suit made to do a recital in, to graduate from New England Conservatory of Music. And that was a very dark suit. But even that was not the full bespoke, because it was Ralph Lauren. Ralph Lauren wasn't doing that, as far as I know. They were only doing the made-to-order thing, which is very good. Again, I'm not dealing now in this conversation at this moment with issues of quality per se. I mean, of course, all this stuff I'm talking about is quality. But, we could go on and on about bespoke and made to measure. And a lot of it has to do with, does a pair of hands make the garment, or does a team of people make the garment, or how much machine there is. But all of this stuff that we're talking about, all of it is very, very high quality, just different styles, different levels. But I thought it'd be interesting to show you. Now think, 1989, 1990, right? Don Johnson, right? Look at this. Look at this beautiful, it's almost like a dinner jacket. It's a worsted. It's just like what I'm wearing here. Because as I said, worsted, reason why I like worsted so much is that it makes a line. It's one of the few fabrics that makes a line. It doesn't stay in one place. Unlike cotton, just to show you what I mean, cotton stays in one place. It's a very stiff fabric. All cotton is like this. So I have this, just to compare, cloths. This is a very well-made cotton. You can see the handwork there on the waistband there. This is all done by hand. And this is, even though the cloth is, you could get this kind of cloth at Banana Republic or J. Crew, it isn't necessarily the cloth is so high-end, but this is all hand. But see how this responds to weight dropping? Compare that to, too much clothes here, right? Compare that to, these are the suit pants of the suit I'm wearing. Look at that. That characteristic is the virtue of this kind of clothing. It it does this, it makes a line. It doesn't stay in one place. It's not stiff. Okay, so that's kind of my Fashion 101. I thought it'd be interesting to just show you Solero. And this is actually not really the right weather for this. This was designed by the British military in the early 19th century for, just people in the trenches. And there was a belief at the time, probably not wholly accurate. There's a lot of, superstition and folklore and woo-woo and stuff and all these what these people thought. And so they thought that this special red thread, I think, in here would prevent sunburn or something. And of course it didn't prevent, or would be a defense against the sun. And maybe there's some truth to it. I mean, it's not totally without, but today science would be a little better than in 1820 or 1810, So this is Solero, and I love this cloth. And this has a slight herringbone. Can you see the herringbone? It's hard to, So this brings up another question, is what is a pattern? See, this is a pattern, right? Because there's a little herringbone there, patterns in the weave, okay? But I use this as a solid, right? Because it's such a tiny pattern that you could put almost anything with it. And in essence, it's very versatile. And that's part of my thinking about, trying to wear stuff that's really versatile, that you can mix and match things and the problem with really loud patterns, of course, I'm not saying never wear a loud pattern. I'm not saying there's not a place for it, but one of the drawbacks of it is that it's limited, in terms of use, and all that. So these are just basic little principles, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk about, while we're on the subject, this is actually the very first custom garment. And as you can see, it's a navy cloth, worsted cloth. You can see here. Now this was actually made, there's, I think this was 1996, and an Italian. You'll never guess why I had this made. I was on Newbury Street in Boston in the 95, 96, and I was just I was actually looking for some music. I was looking for it would have been a compact disc set that it came out. I remember it was a very beautiful day, and there was a compact disc. I think if Keith Jarrett or something had come out and was supposed to be really great, or I think that my memory says I'm just going up another street, just watching the people, summer's day. And there's this kind of garish sports clothing store. Sports, that's not quite casual wear. And I'm like, well, what the heck is this place? I went in there and I didn't really like a lot of the stuff. It wasn't really my thing. It was well made. I should add that this is another issue, that style is disconnected from quality to some degree in this realm, because you could have something really, really well made, but the taste level's not great, or you might find it kind of ugly, or you might find it garish, and that's an interesting separation there sometimes. So this was clothing I didn't like. It was very, very fashionable, but I could see it was well made. Okay. And there was this old man in the back of the store. And I was talking to the son, and they're I guess this would have been 1995, so think Jerry Seinfeld. A lot of big shirts, right? I don't know, those kind of very, remember there was that vogue for those jeans. It just, I don't know, just a kind of a very, shirts with very wide wide sleeves. A lot of stuff like that. I don't know why, just that era. But there was an old man. It turns out that the guy that owned this store, the store did not last very long at all. Lasted 2 years. Happened to have a dad that was a custom tailor in Italy. And he had given it up and stopped doing it because he just wanted to sell jeans and chinos and sports shirts and really high quality. These are Italian store. Been very high quality. And I start talking to the old man, and he was a tailor. He talked about being he said, Mitch, I can make you a suit by hand, cheaper than a lot of other people, because I don't do it anymore. I'm out of the business, and we'll work it out a deal with my son. Beautiful. And For a whole 2 months in 1995, I would just swing by this store and talk to the son's girlfriend and all the Italian. I think, oh God, goodness, now it's coming back to me. The whole family would bring in cookies and things. It was really, it's sort of, so there's so many experiences. I got to know this tailor. And, he was very generous, and I would actually watch him make this garment. First time I'd ever seen that up close. And again, I'm 28, 27. I've heard about things like that. And I maybe, and I got really wow. And this was before I met Charles Davidson, before I became involved in, the Great Andover Shop and, all that stuff. And I was kind of just, having a little thing here and there. But this thing will outlive me, I have to say. I'm just saying, it's, I don't know. Within reason. I guess it could get frayed. But I've talked too long about all this. I don't know. It's just interesting, though. It does relate to the issue because this is, this was a store. Like it was a building people went into. And there was a display, right? That's kind of that world. That's a whole, I'm trying to paint a portrait of an entire, like 150-year-old world where you kind of go into a building and you watch a person make something. Or you could have a factory where people use machines. It's a similar principle because there's a building and people go to the building. And it strikes me that that's kind of a whole world in a way. So I thought it'd be fun to take out some of my fashion books that are really heavy. They have volume and mass like this thing. Or, what we got here? This thing's so heavy. Savile Row, look at that. And of course, on the back, a patron saint of the row. Of course, is Cary Grant. And this is Cary Grant in 47. And this is Cary Grant going to his tailor, which was Kilgore, French, and Stanbury. And I could tell from the picture and the year, this is around the time he was in the Philadelphia story. So, there you have it. And there's a lot of pictures in here. I'm not going to get into all this now. I don't want to bore. This might be boring. I don't know. I don't know if this stuff interests anybody. I don't know. It doesn't. I really don't know. It does relate to aesthetics for sure. So, here's an example of one of the very first pieces of music I wrote. When I say wrote, like that's composed with like scores. No computers. This would have been like 87. And look at my little scribbles here. Look at that. Again, volume mass. It takes up space. It's a sheet music. Isn't that interesting? I don't know. And let's see what we got here. Here's a picture of me writing a piece of music at the age of 28 in a beach resort. Not a fancy resort. I don't want you to get far from the right idea. This was not what I would do, I was a kind of a strange 20-something. I had all these deadlines, particularly so I became very deeply involved with some classical music people at that time. And now I was getting, if you heard my concert Wednesday night, it's not really, I'm a jazz guy, I'm not, again, I felt, this is a complicated question because I felt like, decisions and, they wanted me to write serious music. It was a period of time, I would say, between the year of 1990 and I would say 98, I was writing sonatas. I was just really pushing the classical music thing. And I always, I was deep. I don't want to get me wrong. It was very important to me, but it was not. I only now, with hindsight, realize I didn't really want to be doing a lot of that. What I mean is not writing that music, but it kind of, I was on track to do this other thing of like playing popular. It's just funny. So, but that sort of misdirection or redirection to writing symphonies I mean, I only wrote one symphony, which I'll get to, but this is me writing my first symphony. Opened up another kind of world in a way, you know. And so what I would do is, it's really demanding to write orchestration and things like that. And so one of the systems I devised was, in the summer, I would check into like a cheap motel in New England, a clean motel. Always on the ocean. And I would just take my electric keyboard and headphones with me. It was like a little, it was like a one of the, you know, thank you. It was like a cheap, it wasn't a Yamaha DX7, one of those, it was like, and I just work on the music, you know. And this is me at age of 28. Look there, look at me. In that motel. Look at that phone. But there I am writing music. Isn't that interesting? 28 years old. This would have been, you know, 28, 93, 94, somewhere in there. Another era, right? A different era. I'm 56 now. It's 2024. It's interesting, isn't it? The passage of time, and it's a very actually a deep and profound thing, isn't it? The nature of just the time passing and doing different things. And, you know, I wanted to be a jazz pianist, but, you know, a really important classical music producer, impresario, wanted to push me into writing classical music, and so I was influenced by him. Interesting. And so it wasn't really what I set out to do, but yet I learned things in doing that and had great experiences. I got to record at Abbey Road Studio. And again, so it's interesting. It's an interesting philosophic question of, I'm going along in this direction. I know what I want to do. Somebody with great influence, or who sort of says, well, Mitch, why don't you go over here and do this? I see you can do this. And I don't know, it's sort of interesting, right? So, I don't know. So I thought it'd be fun. I don't know. Let me come back. I'm gonna get out the TV for a little bit. The other thing too is that at the same time as all this was going on, I was having to do stuff for the family business. Jack Buchanan, the British Fred Astaire, absolutely. Peter, you know about Jack Buchanan. Well, someday I'm going to play Elsie Randolph and Jack Buchanan. Yeah, I'll do that. That's true. Wow. Do you want to play Jack Buchanan now? So, see, Peter, you got me on a digression. If you don't know who Jack Buchanan is, folks, one of the greatest singers, pop singers of that era. Amazing singer. Should we interrupt this and play Jack Buchanan? This is what it says it is. Richard Pryor in concert. This is a fair use show. I'm not going to show this movie. Don't worry. I mean, I might show 30 seconds. You know, don't worry. It's just to illustrate something. So, this is an auditorium, and this is Richard Pryor, and this is kind of this documentary style, the Maysles brothers and Ricky Leacock and all these wonderful filmmakers who I really like, Charlotte Zwerwin, and there's so many. Jeff Kreines, one of my really good friends on Facebook, was a really important working in this style. It's a whole style, and with beliefs about how to photograph real objects. It's a tradition, it's almost as deep a tradition as fiction filmmaking. It has its own codes and its own. Anyway, that's kind of what you're seeing here. And I just wanted to show the feeling of volume and mass in terms of a performer. And when a performer goes on the stage, you know, they're live and they might interact with the audience. And so, and not necessarily what you think, not necessarily a negative or a heckling type of thing, but could be positive. It's just fun just to see, just to. So, Jeff Margolis did this film here. A couple things. Notice the handheld. And notice the lighting. This is classic 70s filmmaking. But this handheld I like. It doesn't make you dizzy. Because the cameras were heavier. And so it's a little more, I think it's just better. And also, this Richard Pryor. I just want to play a little of this. See this.
Thank you. Thank you. Hey, thank you. Thank you much. Good evening. Wait for the people to get from the bathroom. People in there pissing on. Wait, the shit done started.
Look at this here. This happens.
What's happening, blood? What's going on?
He says, "What's happening?" to the gentleman returning to his seat. He says, gives a fist. He says, "Right on." That's a cultural. That's a thing. That's like what I'm trying to say is that. I mean, you could have that virtually or through screens. I mean, you could have a famous performer and they like now talk to the audience. There's nothing quite like the room, the spiritual, it's the spiritual power of in the room and the dude acknowledging each other. And there's nothing performing.
Jesus Christ, look at the white people rushing back. White people don't care, Jack. Just come out anyways. Say, fuck it, we're going. I don't give a shit.
You want to get some? That's a little taste of Richard. It's a great film. If you haven't seen, this was an interesting period for Richard Pryor because he does this, and then a few years later, he does another major concert from the early '80s after his burn or after his. Or before, and so that's this period for Richard Pryor, 1977 through 84, I want to say, are amazing years in his career. Just beyond, and this concert and the one a few years later are remarkable. Just remarkable. I don't. But another thing that occurs to me is that this is online. This is on Netflix. Okay. Let's use our imagination. Physical copies of things. So if this were a physical copy, and I'm sure this might exist, I don't have it. Richard Pryor in concert, you would get a deluxe set, and you would get features, right? And the features could be an interview with Chris Rock about what Richard Pryor means to him, an audio commentary with Rain Pryor, his daughter, an ex. I don't know, his agent, recollections of people in comedy, Jerry Seinfeld, they would really go to town. So why is it that when companies like Criterion put out things you've already seen and package it with all of this artwork and all this, what is that about? Here's what I want to say. That's the cries of the artists. That's designers and artists and illustrators saying, wait a minute here. We want to retain the specialness. We want to give you something physical to have for a while that's important, is what that is. And it takes a lot of different forms. So too many books, right? Look at me in my 20s again. Isn't that crazy? Look at that. Age, right? What are you going to do? So this is interesting to me. So the physical release. So so this is Richard Linklater's Dazed and Confused. So this would have been in the 2000s. But look at all this. They give you all this. Books, what I was talking about, essays on the significance of one movie, Dazed and Confused. Pictures. Right? And it's sort of exciting. Like when I bought this in, what was it, 2004, I think I got this? I don't know. This was like, to me, like Christmas, right? I mean, look at this. Beautiful. You know, behind the scenes of all the cast and, I mean, the spirit of 76. I mean, all this. So this is, what I'm saying is that, you know, the director, the producers, the people who put this movie out have a sense, all of them, that they want to have a sense of specialness about releasing something. And what I'm sort of suggesting is that that sense of specialness or wanting to make a big production out of it comes from this world. In other words, it comes from the 20th century. And the notion that an art object takes up some kind of space, that there's a place you go to see it, and that it's not something, it's not totally non-physical. It's not disembodied. It's embodied. There's a human on the stage, and there's a human in the audience, and they have an interaction. There's something going on there. And this is all part of kind of what I want to talk about. And sort of interesting. So whenever there's a development in culture that might take away from this, or the virtues of this old world, or whatever you want to call it, artists always fight back in different ways. And one of the ways they do is releasing these films in a special way. They hire an illustrator. They hire, you know, maybe this illustrator that worked on this Dazed and Confused, maybe they hadn't had a really a fulfilling job until they did this. Maybe this, you know, maybe this was really a big deal for them, you know. And so it put them to work, and they did that. And so that's kind of my, and it goes all over the place. So like, you know, Andrew Bajowski, my friend Andrew, his movie Funny Ha Ha, they even released his thing in a special way. And look what they did. Scenes from the film. Look what they did here. And there's Andrew. Look at that. Isn't that beautiful? This is Lena Dunham's favorite movie, I think. She's right to have it be her favorite movie, by the way. I mean, she gets it. But I bet that's interesting, you know? I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, that's really kind of this episode is sort of volume and mass, and these things are heavy. And that's I know there's something I'm going to forget. You know, this episode later, I say, oh, I forgot to talk about this. I showed some original music, and I forgot to, you know. So I guess I could talk a little bit about some of these stories. So yeah, I was watching this guy make my jacket in the suit in this store. And I would just hang out with him. You know. Really interesting. Really interesting. I don't know. It's just one of many experiences, you know, with something. Just like I never saw Richard Pryor in concert, unfortunately. But I saw all these movies when they came out before HBO, you know, in the theater with my dad. Sometimes I would go with my dad to 42nd Street and see, see the what we would call the non-adult or non-X-rated, you know, the kung fu movies, or see, you know, sometimes, I don't know, the term would be grindhouse type pictures. I went to all of those as a child. So, I mean, that's a whole, I'd love to do a whole episode just on exploitation films and on 42nd, but sometimes films would play on 42nd Street, you know. And so that's a fun thing. So it's interesting, right? So me in that motel, this is what came out of that. So this is from that same year. This would have been from, yeah. And so that's my symphony. So one of these days I'll come on here and play excerpts from it, or I'll talk about it. And so I thought that portion of the program, I thought I would show a little Richard Pryor and talk about kind of the notion of the coffee table book, right? The notion of these heavy books. But if, you have heavy books and maybe people say, well, goodbye to heavy books, too much to worry about. Well, just put it all online. And so there's a kind of a sense in which, well, why not? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why not. I love these books, but again, I have a sense of proportion. I don't, I just have the books that are important to me, and it's an aesthetic issue, and the issue, it raises again philosophical questions about production, distribution, what human beings want from an experience, or what they don't want, or what human beings want from a work of art. I mean, I get excited about seeing Andrew because I know Andrew. I knew him when he made this movie, before he became, and so when I see this, wow, he has illustrators, so I get excited about that, and I don't know. I mean, it's and I stand by my idea that this is kind of there's a sense in which, they're saying, let's make this special. Let's not be obliterated. They're saying, hire us, is what they're really saying. They're saying, don't make us obsolete. Don't create a world in which there's nothing for us to do. Kind of, to put it in a stronger sense, right? So, even if it's a man on a stage, or a woman, or any human on a stage saying something, it's a stage, it's an auditorium. So I thought that would be interesting to talk about that. That's my volume, I call that volume and mass, taking being present, taking up space as a kind of, as a word wouldn't be alternative, as kind of alongside, everything being online, or everything being a little screen, or everything being a little device like this. We could watch Richard Pryor on this, It ain't like seeing it it ain't like going to 42nd Street with an audience and watching Richard Pryor. There's no universe. I mean, there's no universe in which I wouldn't want that experience again in 1979, 1980. I don't know, maybe it's more fun. I don't know. What can I tell you? I don't know. Have a great weekend. Passover and many things and coming up. And it's raining right now, and it's beautiful, but it's rain. Journey of an Estate podcast. The next time we meet, I think I'm going to be doing the book lunch and digging into Hannah Arendt. I mean, look, it's a doozy. I got to get ready for that. It's a lot to do there. It's worth it, but it's a work. So, yes. Thank you, Peter, Yvette, everybody who's come out. Volume and mass is my idea. It's just an idea. When we come back on this series, I'm going to return to that old world and look at some artists of this 50, 60 year period. I've got songwriters and entertainers and things, and we'll look at it and kind of, just look at the point of view of what's, see, I have these biographies, like I have Sammy Kahn's biography. And so when you read Sammy Kahn talking about writing for Frank Sinatra, there's interest in that. Even if you're not a fan of Frank or Sammy Kahn, it's still this world. There's an interest in hearing Paul Schrader talk about having to direct Richard Pryor and Blue Collar and the challenge of that. It's beautiful. It's difficult, but beautiful. And it's historically interesting, because Paul Schrader is a good filmmaker, And there's just there's something you get from hearing the actual account of the people who made it. Nothing can replace that, I think, And so that's kind of one of the things I'm interested in. So, a good weekend, happy Friday, and thanks for coming out in the rain.